So I want to introduce them to you. First up, we have Lily Giglio. Everybody say hi to Lily.
Yeah.
And next up, we have Alan Roses.
Yeah.
Next up, let me just gush just a little bit. This is my boo thing, y'all, so you just better be super nice. This is my wife, Janelle Keitlinger is my wife. Big man upstairs. And last but not least, Martin Mendoza. Martin Mendoza, give it up for Martin Mendoza. And so you guys, in this remainder of this session before lunch, is we wanted to what'd you say? Oh yeah, this is Brian Barcelona, the founder of One Voice Student Ministry.
Again, I appreciate that. Though. Thank you.
Y'all already clapped for him, but double dosage. Oh, she said I'm new. Okay, thank you. All right, so you guys, this is fun. I like this. So what we're gonna do today, you guys, is we're gonna give you the tools, young people, to actually go and reach your school for Jesus. And so we talked about the real passion and the drive and the calling and the obedience that we need, the Holy Spirit, the prayer, all of that we need to see our schools reach. Nick gave you an incredible message on just the simple gospel and using your voice to reach your generation by telling them about Jesus. And in this session, we want to talk specifically about how you as a student, a young adult, a parent, a pastor can go into schools and launch what we call Jesus clubs. These are clubs that are currently, through the partnership of local churches, are reaching about 10,000 students, 8 to 10,000 students weekly, every single week in these clubs. And we're seeing God do amazing things with so many people involved, God using so many people who have a yes in their heart. And so to kick off today's panel conversation on this topic, I'm gonna ask a simple question, but before I do, I wanna encourage you to get your phones out, not to text, not to be on Instagram. We don't want you to get distracted, man. Be present. But to take notes, because the stuff we're gonna share today is gonna be so much gold for you going forward and giving you direction on what you can do to reach your campus, okay? So we encourage you to take notes. What's up, people in the balcony? How y'all doing? Y'all doing good up top? You doing good up top? Yeah, we see you were always looking down here. You see like the top of my beautiful hair.
Brandon, can we just acknowledge this morning was pretty wildly packed for a morning session.
For a morning session was loaded,
and
man.
there is still, I think, maybe I'm wrong, there's maybe almost a couple hundred people that have already paid register that haven't even showed up yet. They're all rolling in tonight.
There's a bunch of people coming today.
This day is just going to keep going on. So
I agree. It's going to be amazing. But y'all are getting the gold right now. You ready to do this? All right, so my first question for you guys is working on campuses. We're gonna start in slow and then get deep. What was some of the funniest or most messed up things that you've seen happen on a public high school campus from your experience in campus ministry? Real quick, what's something funny that you've experienced on a high school campus go week in and week out?
All right, so this kind of messed up / funny. So there was this student who wasn't so fond of me. You know, I had to win him over. But he was walking by. I gave him a pizza. And then later I encountered him in the campus. And he threw his crust at me. So that's pretty messed up.
She got stoned with some pizza crust.
That's called persecution in America.
Some pizza crust. That's funny. Anything else funny, crazy? What about the kid that you just saw like tell us about that. He's just like, peace.
Check, great. So there's this student, he's amazing, and but before we started to hang out with him and believe in him and disciple him and stuff like that, we would be leaving the Jesus Club, so our van would be taking out the parking lot, and then we just see someone like jumping over the fence with their skateboard, like jumping on the fence. He's like, "Hey guys, I'll see you at Jesus Club next week," like leaving the school campus, ditching. So it's really cool because all types of students come into our clubs, even the ones who ditch, but we want to welcome every single student, and we love them, so yeah.
Brian, how about you, man? I'm sure you got a bunch.
Oh, man, I got too many. There was this one, I was in Compton, I was preaching there for about a year, and there was this one kid who stole some pizza from us. And I knew that he stole the pizza. He was denying it, but the box was under his shirt. And I was like, bro, he's like, what? And I'm like, bro, you're taking, he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, bro, there's a freaking box under your shirt. And I was like, if you're hungry, I'll just feed you. Like, don't gotta steal from me. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was funny.
That is funny, man. He's like a pizza delivery man. Like, that's messed up. All right, so we're gonna go a little more deep now. We're gonna talk about the reality of high schools. So from you guys being on campuses, what are some of the ways that students view themselves? So you see students walking through campuses all the time. How do they view themselves? What are the identities that these students are taking on and living out every day of their life? What are some of the things that you've seen? Alan, how about you?
Yeah, so hanging out with a lot of the guys, there's like such a desire for like family and to like, mainly with the guys, they don't know who they are, you know, and they really want to prove themselves. And the way that they have to prove themselves a lot of the times is like through anger, through like being macho and you know, and cussing and being aggressive and calling women names and all this, putting up this front, you know. And I totally get it. I see right through it because that was me, you know. And so it just sucks because I know that on the inside, you know, they're hurting, they're in pain, and they're just crying out for help. So when I see those students, I'm like, man, like, I love you, you know. So
yeah, Martin, how about you? What are some of the ways that you've seen students handle themselves? Who are these students? How do they view themselves? What's the identity that they carry every day?
Yeah, so it's been a lot of years since I've been back into a high school. So it's pretty
How
amazing.
many, Martin?
Huh? 31.
No, how many years have you been out of high school?
Oh, I mean, since the last time I entered into a high school.
No, but how many years has it been since you've been out of high school?
Oh my gosh, probably like 13 years. 13 years. So honestly, to go back, and it's almost the same thing. It hasn't changed. You know, so for God to bring us in there to be the solution for these students, it's really amazing. So just to be there, and just the identities that you see, again, they're just striving for attention. They're striving for attention, and they say the wildest things just to get our attention. You know, and you don't have to say much to us. Honestly, we're there to serve you. We're there to help you. You know, so when you go in, it's just so overwhelming. You just feel the pain of these students and what they're feeling. I mean, they cover it up very well, you know, what they wear and how they speak, but you can really feel the brokenness and the stuff that they're really going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we see students every day, and some of you guys can relate to this. So real quick, out loud, what are some of the identities that people in your school carry? So we've got athlete, right? What are some other things that we've got? Shout it out. Nerd.
Gangsters.
Gangster. What else? Chalitos. Did I just say a bad word? I hope I didn't. I don't speak Spanish. Forgive me.
Cholitos.
That what he said.
Lean like a cholo.
Mexican gangsters. Thank you for the translation. What else? Yeah, okay, great. That's great. Thank you.
MVPs.
Yeah, so the question I have for you now, is where I'm going to shift the panel to you, is I'm going to ask you this. Who are you?
That's good.
Who are you? Because you've got the athletes, you've got the jocks, you've got the nerds, you've got the Mexican gangsters. What's that word?
Cholo.
Thank you. You've got all of that. But my question for you now is, who are you? And your answer to this question can literally shift your high school forever. Lily, who are they?
Yeah, you guys are sons and daughters of God.
That's right.
And He's
That's
giving
good.
you so much
Come on.
power and confidence. You know, you guys can attain so much confidence from the one who saved you. And even though you're not perfect, even though you're not the coolest, because I was not the coolest and I'm still not the coolest, you know, it's just knowing that God loves you and He gives you confidence, and that love that He gives you, like, you don't have to just keep it to yourself, and you just know that other people are as nervous as you are to be real. They are just as need that you know, like you had need at some point. So that same need, they have it. The difference is that everybody puts front, and you just have to tell yourself, hey, you know what? I'm okay with my flaws. I'm okay with making mistakes, because the one who created me doesn't, like, he sees past that, you know, and He gives me confidence. So that's what you guys are. So remember that, you know, you're sons and daughters who have confidence and who have love, and it doesn't matter who you are, but you got this. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So as sons and daughters of God, you've been appointed as messengers of the gospel. You've been appointed as ambassadors and missionaries on your campus. And if you embrace that you say, man, the core of my identity isn't being a student. My core of my identity isn't being an athlete. The core of my identity is that I'm a son and a daughter of God, and I'm here on a mission sent from God. And I'm going to take my athletics serious. I'm going to take my studies serious. But man, I'm here to see my whole school saved is what I'm here for. This is my mission field. Things will start to shift. And so the next question for you is, what do you believe God can do on your campus? What do you believe he could do through your life? And a few years ago, Brian, you had that very same conversation with a girl in Northern California where you looked around a room and you said, what do you believe that God can do in your campus? What was their answer and what did God do?
Yeah, you guys might have been here last night, and she was here. She'll be here later on today as well. Her response was, I believe God will save my school. And that was a club that ran close to 600 a week. Okay, I'll try that again. 600 a week.
Woo! Come on, God. Thank you.
Okay, I'm
God.
gonna try one more time. 600 kids a week
It's amazing.
gathered, and the whole varsity football team came, basketball team, cheerleaders in their pom-poms, gangbangers. I mean, you name it, drug dealers, everyone would come. I mean, hopefully they stopped selling drugs, you know. The Lord saved their hearts. He was working on their hands.
Amen.
But yeah, I mean, it was really, really wild, man, that one girl's faith.
Yeah, and it took a student doing that. And one thing you need to understand is that Brian Barcelona never gained access to that school without a student. There had to be a student involved for God to move in this way. Because apart from a student, you don't get access to a high school. Because you guys are the one who have the rights. And we'll talk about that in a second. But what we're talking about today, this girl partnered with Brian and they launched something called the Jesus Club. It's a Jesus Club gathering where students would come every week. And the Jesus Club is a little different than a traditional club. Janelle, why don't you tell us a little bit, what is a Jesus Club? And how is it different than maybe a Bible club that other people might have gone to in the history in middle school or high school before?
Totally. I led a middle school and high school Bible study, and I thought I was awesome, and it was me and all my Christian friends. So the cool thing I love about Jesus Club is it's not just, hey, you know Jesus and I know Jesus, let's get together and talk about Jesus. It's, hey, I know Jesus, but I have a school full of peers who don't know Jesus, and I want them to have an invitation to meet the God I know. Okay, and so we meet, and it's so cool, because in some settings we have started it in a classroom, but we are seeing gyms and auditoriums filled with students who don't yet know Jesus. And that's what it's all about. It's all about giving our friends, our peers who might not yet be friends, and a moment to meet Jesus, the one who's changed and encountered and transformed our lives. So it's not just, we all know Jesus, powwow. It's, hey, we know Jesus and we know the power Jesus has and the difference he's made in our lives, and we're not content just sitting here, us knowing Jesus. We want everyone else to.
Yeah, and so with Jesus Club, the way I like to present it, it is the Bible club for everybody else. Yeah. Like, it's the Bible club for everybody who's not a Christian. Like, it's the people who are like, I kind of want to know about this Jesus dude. Like, and they can come. It's for everybody. So that's what this is about. It's about you and other Christians getting a vision of seeing your campus reach with the gospel and doing something about it every single week. And so when it comes to starting a Jesus Club, there's some really practical things. So get your notes ready. So if you're a student, man, this right here is how you can launch a Jesus Club on your campus, right? This is how you can do it. So step number one.
Step number one. Okay, I'll give you the practicals, but I'm serious about this. Just have confidence. Like, have confidence and know you can do it, and don't think you need superpowers. Really, that's the first mindset. Hey, I'm going to start it. And once you have that mentality, say, okay, I'm going to gather friends, and we're going to pray together. We're going to pray, and we're going to ask God to help us, help us to follow the next steps. So we'll give you step number 2.
Step number 2 is just to go and talk to your pastor. So you're not going to have to do this alone. We're all in this together. So if you decide, man, I have a vision to see my school meet Jesus, go talk to your youth pastor, your senior pastor, and share that vision and ask them to partner with you.
Yeah, and if you're a senior or youth pastor or youth leader at your local church, One Voice has a whole entire part of our ministry that's dedicated to training you and teaching you how to work with students to reach a campus for Jesus. And so if you want information that you're like, hey, I want to see the local high school of my city reach with the gospel, we want to partner with you, and there's a booth right outside. It says, My Campus, My Mission. That's all for pastors, leaders, young adults that would say, hey, our church wants to partner with students to see high schools reached. We want to get your information and get you moving forward and working with students to see your local high schools reached, okay? So step 3, going over here, step 3.
Yeah, step 3. Okay, sorry, I thought I forgot step 3. No, step 3 is that you as a student, empowered student, you have to go to the office and you have to fill out paperwork to start your club. If you don't know where to start, you can ask, any, counselor or teacher or staff on campus, and it might even be in your student handbook.
Yeah, so there's probably some paperwork to start a club that you have to fill out. So you're gonna need to do that. And one of the key parts of that paperwork is step number 4. Martin.
Yeah, so step number 4, but before I say this, man, is Miss On in here? Miss On, she's one of our team.
Yeah.
She's one of our teacher sponsors. She's amazing, and one of our and the Jesus
Give it
Club.
up for Miss
Round of
On.
applause to Miss On.
Yeah, from Manual Arts. She's amazing. Please, guys, go up to her, give her a big hug, love on her. We love her dearly, and we believe that we're in there because of her prayers. 12 years, this woman was praying that Jesus Club will be in her school at Manual Arts.
Come on.
Yeah, so the 4th one is to find a teacher sponsor that will support you, that will believe with you, that will stand in the gap with you and in faith believing that it can happen.
Yeah, and so as part of your paperwork, you have to get a teacher that will sponsor your club. Your club can't exist without a teacher sponsor. So a teacher like Miss On, who loves Jesus, who wants to see the school saved, like that's the kind of teacher you want to get to roll with you, man. Miss On is amazing. So you guys, that's the kind of teacher you want. Now, so those are the 4 steps. It's that simple. In your church, when we train your leaders, they're going to give you the rest of the information about how to launch and some special things you want to do. But as a student, that's the 4 things that you guys can do to launch a Jesus Club on your high school. Now, I know there might be some fear. When we talk about Jesus Club, we're like, man, Jesus Club, like, man, my principal's not even a Christian. Like, this is about to go bad. Like, I'm about to get detention every day, you know? Like, he's not gonna like this request. Well, we're gonna tell you some stories now that are gonna stir your faith, that show you that it doesn't take a Christian principal. It doesn't even if they say no, doesn't mean that's the end. And so, Brian, tell us a little bit about a school we went on where we met Cameron this past year with that principal who wasn't a believer, and what happened when we went there.
Yeah, so we got on a new school this last year. Never had been to the school, and so I didn't really know kind of what we were getting ourselves into. But we got a connection with the student there. He actually came to one of our events and said, hey, I go to this school. I said, great, let's meet with the teacher. So we're meeting with him and his teacher, and all of a sudden the principal finds out we're on the campus and calls me to his office. I don't care how old you get when you get called to the principal's office. It is still terrifying, right? So I'm in his office, and I'm looking at like things I could start conversations, like something in his office, and his name is Mr. G. And so he walks in, and I stand up. I'm like, how are you doing, sir? He goes, don't call me sir. I'm like, oh, right, mister. I don't really know what to say. And he goes, what do you want to do here? I says, well, my name is Brian. I want to start a Jesus Club. Figured I might as well tell him the truth. You don't want to bait and switch him. Just be honest with him. I said, I want to start a Jesus Club. He goes, done. What else you want? I was like, I want to bring 15 people a week. Done. What else you want? Like, I want $1 million, I go, I want the gymnasium during lunch. He goes, done. What else you want? Wow. So I want to preach the gospel. Done. What else? Just down the list. I want to bring donuts. Done. Just one thing after another. So finally he goes, do you know why I'm letting you in? And I go, I have no idea why you're letting me in. He goes, I'm letting you in because, he said 3 years ago, so 3 years prior, this school was having full-blown riots. Wow. Wild. They hadn't had any sort of Bible-believing club in that school in 16 years. He says, for these last year, I've been prepping this school, and goes, and I just believe that what you have, we are now ready to receive. And so, guys, I feel like why even this moment, I know some of you may be in this room, you're like, well, I don't really have a heart for high schools. What is this whole panel about? Maybe, I should dip out early for lunch. Hear me out on this. I was 18 years old when I was at a camp, and God spoke to me to go into schools. How many were here last night? Anybody? So I'm a guitar player, right? My passion was to do music. I was like, I'm going to pursue music, and one day I'm going to play with a rock star. Well, I got to do that last night. It was so fun. But when I was in 2009, God interrupted my life at a meeting very similar to this. And I knew that I could leave it as an interruption, or it could be an invitation. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You can have an interruption, or you can have an invitation. And I feel like even now in the room, some of you high schools may never have been on your grid. You're like, man, I don't want anything to do with high school. I left high school. I hated high school, right? It was a miserable experience for me. Well, man, why not go in and redeem it? So we got into this school, long story short, club launch, 200 kids got saved.
Tell them about the mural.
And we got to do a mural on one of their walls. It was so wild. We got to put Dr. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, on the wall. It was just this wild moment of just total faith.
Yeah, and then Janelle met with this principal. Mind you guys, this is a non-believing principal who's saying yes to all of this. And so Janelle meets with him just this past month, and what did he say about this past year?
Lily and I went and met with him, and so we just completed being on campus for 2 years, and so we were just wanting to connect on how we could serve his school in the future, what were his dreams, and he just looked at us and he's like, you guys already do so much, and we were talking about graduation, and he was sharing with us that they only had, I believe it was 3 students not graduating, and I used to be a teacher, so I was like, wow, that's amazing, what do you attribute that to? You know, coming in South Central, that's not the norm to only have 3 students not graduating, and he looked at us and he goes, you guys, what? And he's like, yeah, like you guys make such a difference on this campus that these students look up to you and like their lives have been changed.
So it's amazing. It's truly amazing, man, because you guys need to know that as sons and daughters, you carry the kingdom of God, and it impacts and affects everything. It affects education. It affects social interaction. It affects people with addiction that they're set free. It affects everything. So you go in with a Jesus club, but you end up seeing families saved. You guys, that's what happens. So this starts with youth and young people. You're the ones at the front line starting this, Brian.
And real quick before I pass it to Rosas, like, guys, I want you to get this perspective. I feel like what's so unique, any millennials in the room? You're a millennial. There's more millennials. Any post-millennials? Okay, who's a 90s baby? Make some noise. You a 90s baby. Doug, Rugrat, Tamagotchis, Furbies, Pokemon. Y'all know what I'm talking about when cartoons were good, right? Cat Dog, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Powerpuff Girls. Anyways. Anyone born before the 90s, make some noise.
Yeah.
Anyone born after 2000, make some noise. There is something unique in the generation, I believe, that's alive right now. Yeah. And I feel like this, we don't want a Jesus that is only found in a building. That's right. I think we are so done with it. It's so, would you not agree, it's so unattractive, right? This Jesus that's stuck in a building and it's like, it's only in there can you find God. I feel like for generations we've invited people to church and not Christ. Yeah. And I'm not saying you don't get connected with a local church. What I'm saying is it's understanding that we gather together, but God, I mean, remember this revelation that Peter has of the Son of God. He says, on this rock I'll build my church and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Do you realize that the gate is the last defense of a kingdom? You getting that? Some of you went, right? Gates are the last defense of a kingdom, and if God puts his church at the gates of hell, that means it's its last defense. That means that we're not on the defensive, we're on the offensive. Does that make sense? So what we're believing for is that the kingdom of light is going to invade the kingdom of darkness in schools all over America.
Yeah, Alan, is there something you wanted to add?
Oh, just really short. As we were talking about Mr. G and what we did on his campus, I remembered ending one of, not last year, but the year before that. And I remember ending with like a huge like party like on the school. You know, we gave out shoes and stuff like that. And just the words that rang in my head was something he said. And he said, you guys did not only talk about this Jesus, you not only just talk the talk, but you came through and you walked the walk. You guys lived like Jesus. And this is why I truly believe that he was attracted to us, why he invited us onto his campus, because we're not just talking about it, we're living it. So,
yeah. Absolutely. And some of you here today as students, you might be believing a lie that says, man, I can't talk about Jesus on my campus. It's against the law. I can't pray on campus. I can't share my faith on campus. It's against the law. And the reality is that all those things are complete lies. Those aren't true. Those are not true statements. In fact, the Department of Education of the United States government crafted a document. I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. It's called the Equal Access Act. And what it says is students of religious backgrounds, kids that are Christians in different religions, they have the same rights as every other student on a high school campus. In non-educational times, meaning when you're not in math class, you're not in a class, you can read your Bible, you can pray, you can share your faith with your fellow students around campus. You can pass out flyers inviting them to your church events, inviting them to Jesus Club. You can start clubs, you can put in announcements. If any other club, if the chess club can put in an announcement, you can put in an announcement at the beginning of the day. You as a student are completely protected by law to be an ambassador of Jesus on your campus. It's unreal. It's unreal. And if someone tries to stop that, we want to be kind and gentle and loving and serving, but we can also express with humility, I respect what you're saying, but I have to show you this document. You're infringing upon my rights, and I respect you, but I want to be able to do what I'm allowed to do by law. And so again, we don't go and kicking the door down. Listen here, look at this. We don't do that. We're not doing that. We're coming in like Jesus with humility, but we can fight for our rights to share Jesus on our campus because you're protected by law to do it. And so one thing is in the 1960s, prayer was taken out of school, and I want you to get this. And what that meant, so prayer's taken out of school, it doesn't mean that students can't pray. It means back in the day, at the beginning of every day, they would all say a prayer together. Brian, what was the prayer that people would pray at the beginning of the day?
I don't know.
How many words is it?
It was 22 words.
So it's a 22-word prayer.
22-word prayer.
And so they would say a prayer at the beginning of the day. I thought you knew. I don't know.
It was something similar. Like it was literally like, Lord, like bless our family, bless our country. It was like very generic and the whole. Was anyone alive in those days? Did anyone in this room actually pray in school? Like you remember praying in your school at all? Does anyone remember praying? Like we got one person. Was it a Christian school? Okay. Nowadays, do you guys even do the pledge anymore? Okay. No, some schools do. Every day we stood up, we're like, favorite time of class because you didn't have to learn anything. So, yeah, that and lunch. But anyways, so yeah, it was a 22-word prayer that people used to pray.
Yeah, and so what that meant is the whole school would pray together to start the school day. So when the government took that prayer out of school, they took that corporate prayer, not your personal prayer. You see, the government took prayer out of school, but they didn't take you out of school. Right. And you're there right now as an ambassador of Jesus, and you can pray, and you can preach, and you can share. And get this. Check this out. You can even, if the assignment permits, you can pull Jesus into your assignment. So like if your school says, hey, I want you to write a historic paper about a significant person in history. It can be anybody you want it to be. You better believe Jesus is getting preached up in here today. You know what I'm saying? You can legally do that. You can legally do that as a student. And so I just want to break those lies. We just want to break those lies. It doesn't matter if your principle's a Christian. It doesn't matter if you get opposition. You are defended by the law. Man, it doesn't matter. God can use anybody. In fact, maybe you and your church, you go to the school and you're like, man, we want to start a Jesus Club. Our church wants to help us. And the school says, nope, you can't come in. Your church can't come in. Brian, that happened a couple of times to us. I want you to tell the story of how God broke into a school in a really unique way through a critter of sorts.
I'm going to stand.
Spirit-led.
I'm going to stand.
I love this story.
I was in a school in Crenshaw. Anybody been to Crenshaw? These pastors here are going. You guys are still rolling with that school? You guys are still, they were actually the ones that took, and this is the crazy story because you guys, can you all just stand? Probably some of our friends here. Woo! They were, what year was that? A couple years ago? I'm sorry, man. I don't even know. I have 2 daughters now. I don't even know what's going on. They're both under 5. So check this out. I got into this school in Crenshaw. You ever been to Crenshaw before? It's a real nice neighborhood. Walk at night with your valuables, okay? Beautiful area. So I start trying to go into the school. So I show up. Is Miss Shepard still there? Is that lady still there? She was one of the ladies in the front. Anyways, there was this like security guard lady, Miss Shepard. You ever meet someone that's older, but you knew they probably gangbanged before they were old? You knew you probably went to prison, right? She was just gangster. Like, I didn't want to mess with her. Those are the people you want on your side, right? Because the fact that they're that old and they made it, you know they're down, you know? So I walk into this school and I'm like, hi, my name is Brian. I always got to smile. I'm like, hi, good to meet you. She's like, what do you want? I'm like, we're here to start a Bible club. We don't do that here. I said, okay, is there anyone I can speak to? No. All right, have a good day. So I left. So the next week I went and same thing. I'm just going every week. I'm like, man, I'm bound to hit a lottery, something. I'm bound to get some sort of connection. Finally, the 4th week, I'm not gonna lie, guys, I feel absolutely stupid. I'm like, why am I going here? I feel like a loser. I'm just showing up every day getting turned down. Well, on this last day, I'm like, is there anyone I can speak to? And I think the lady maybe just felt bad for me or she just got tired of me. I'll take either one. So she goes, just go to the office. And I was like, great, we're making progress, you know? So I'm walking to the office, I get to the front office. How many of you have ever been to the front office of a school before, right? How many of you have ever talked to those office ladies that have been there for about 104 years, right? You all know what I'm talking about, right? It's like they were Jesus's office people too, right? You know what I love about those people is I feel like they're the kindest people, but they're the most unappreciated people. Would you agree? Like, who appreciates the office ladies? One person, right? It's probably your like classroom time was to serve those guys, right? But nobody ever appreciates. So I walk in, I'm like, how are you guys doing? Hi, right? I'm like, hey, I'm so, but right? We go in, begin to talk, but anyways, as I'm about to walk in to this office, all of a sudden as I'm walking down, this squirrel runs by me and runs into the office that I'm about to go into, and all you hear is, ah! They start screaming. I run in, I'm like, what's going on? Right? And they're like, it's a rat, get it, right? And they're like, get it out. I'm like, all right, everybody out, right? And they get out of the office. So I go in and we trap this squirrel into a room. Now we have all the office ladies are watching through the window, and now the principal's watching through the window. And so I'm like, give me that broom. And I'm like, I'm gonna beat this thing. But then I'm like, no, I can't, because there's gonna be some squirrel advocate out there, right? I probably got one in the room, right?
You're on the news.
On the news, you know, all of a sudden there's protests. Squirrel murder, you know, like, we live in such a weird generation today. Everyone's trying to, right? Could you see it? CNN, squirrel murder, right? So,
Squirrel murder,
I'm like, I
follower
can't
of Jesus.
kill it, you know? So, we gotta get it out. We actually have a video. I have a video of this on my Instagram. If you don't believe me, you gotta watch. You gotta follow me, though. All right, so we trap this squirrel. It like almost jumps on my friend. He screams. He swore it was the girl. It wasn't the girl. It was him. We end up getting the squirrel out, and the principal's like, hey, that was some good work. I'm like, thanks. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, I'm just trying to find someone on the campus who will help me start a Jesus club. He goes, I know a guy. I'll connect you. Now, I don't know how it all works scripturally, right? I know that Holy Spirit possessed the donkey. So I just want to believe that Holy Spirit possessed that squirrel and sent that thing running in. I'm not saying that our strategy is when you can't get into a high school, you release rodents, right? It's not what I'm saying. But man, literally it opened up a door. And how many did you guys gather? They actually were the church that went in after us to take this school. What was your first meeting like when you went to preach there in Crenshaw? 200 students gathered.
Woo!
When in doubt, write this down. When in doubt, bust a squirrel out, all right?
When in doubt, bust that squirrel out. We're putting that on a shirt. All right, so you guys, what we're saying, man, is that persistence and continuing to go forward. Brian had to go to that school 4 times before God sent the squirrel, right? But he sent the squirrel, and God's doing a great work on that campus, that persistence, not to give up, to keep going after your school, to keep believing for what God wants to do on your campus, to keep going, because you need to understand that Jesus wants this more than you do. Jesus, this is in his heart. We're partnering with his dream. This isn't something we thought up. Brian didn't call himself like to go to a school. God called him because it's in his heart. And so today, you guys, man, I just want to encourage you to go before God. Say, God, use me right now. God, use me to reach my campus. God, I have 1 year left. I have 2 years left. I have 3 years left. If you're in the city, if you're a young adult, you might be saying, man, I don't know how to get involved. I'm a young adult. I'm outside of the high school. Man, as young adults, I'll tell you what, churches need laborers to go onto the campus with their team. They need people to go. And if you're a young adult and you're in college, that means you might have a flexible schedule with your classes, and you can give 4 years of your life while you're preparing for the next stage of your life to see a generation after you come to know Jesus.
Yeah.
College students, you can get involved in this. Brian.
Yeah, also too, guys, we have a community of almost 50 of us that live in Pasadena. Literally, like, we all live in Pasadena. So if you're like, man, I want to roll with y'all and reach high schools, you're over 18 and you're not crazy, okay? And you're not just trying to get out of your house because you're rebellious and don't want to be with your mom, okay? If you genuinely would say, man, I want to go and reach students with you guys, you could also go to the back and be like, hey, can you just take my information down? I'd love just to chat with you and see what would it look like to roll into some schools with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, churches, we talked about your activation, about how you can get involved with my campus and my mission. Young adults, we talked to you. Go to your pastors and share this vision. Say, I want to be a part of the team that goes into schools with these students and reaches students. Students, we talk to you. Also, parents. I want to talk to parents. How many parents do we have here of high school students? Any parents? Yeah. So, parents, I think you guys play such a vital role in seeing schools reached. Because one thing you might have heard, right? We always hear about the bad stuff, like Pledge of Allegiance or the 10 Commandments removed, and school can no longer do their graduation out of church. You know, all these things. We hear about the bad stuff because parents complain. Parents who don't want to see Jesus in campuses complain, and the principal feels pressure to bow to those complaints. What if the parents who were for them called just as much? What if they called to say, hey, I heard about the Jesus Club. I heard about the Jesus Club on our campus. It's changing our students' lives. It's amazing. I'm so happy that that is happening on our high school. I just want you to know I support that. And principal, I thank you for allowing that to happen and allowing these students to operate within their rights and do that. Also, host gatherings at your home. Allow your kids to bring their friends over and do Bible studies with them. Man, provide pizza, supply materials, whatever you can as a parent. Oh my goodness, all of us can get involved. And of course, if you're a teacher and educator, any teachers or educators, raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We already talked about the significance of you on a campus when Martin was talking about Miss On. Students have to have a teacher sponsor to launch a club. They have to be present. In fact, get this. If there's ever a Jesus Club that meets and the teacher sponsor isn't in the room, by law, the principal could come in and shut the whole club down forever. For that year, they can come in and say, hey, the teacher sponsor isn't here. You're breaking the rules. We're disbanding your club. A teacher has to be present when the club meets. So teachers, you are vitally important. Your support and your presence is vitally important to this ministry happening on campuses.
Yeah, and real quick, I don't know if you were going to head this way anyways, but is there any questions that you guys have?
Yeah, we're going into question and answer.
In the room that pertains to like something related to this, not like, hey, what kind of waffles you like? Like, I don't like waffles. So... yeah, what do you eat for breakfast? Is there any questions in the room that you guys would want to ask?
And right here, you can shout it out really loud. And Chris, right here, you're going to listen and you're going to repeat their question through the mic. Or you could come up and stand right by Chris. He'll give you the mic and you can ask it.
Can y'all give it up for Chris right now?
Yes, give it up for Chris.
Benching 250 right now. Come on. He is not single.
I just wanted to ask, does a teacher have to be of that school, or could it be any teacher that has their diploma or whatever in school?
Teacher
credentials.
If the teacher's gonna host you in that school, it has to be a teacher of that school.
They have to be the staff of that school.
Yep. Thank you.
Great question.
Anyone else?
Other questions? Just raise your hand. You can shout it out, Chris. We're actually gonna have you stay here, Chris, for camera purposes. So if you guys want, you can come and line up to ask questions. Get on out here. You get on the mic, or just shout. Raise your hand, and we'll point you out, and you can shout your question. I saw some different hands that were up, so go ahead and raise your hand. I saw some people in the back, I think. Okay, Chris, go ahead and repeat that.
No, all over different places.
So question was, is it just in California? Other question?
No, it is not just in Cali. Yes. Yeah, that's good. So how many of you guys have ever had a club on your campus that's like 2.5 kids? Right? Bible club's like 2.5 kids, no one goes. And if you show up, it's in a room that you've never heard of. Like what
Z79
yeah,
room.
what room is a Bible club meeting in? You never heard of it. And then if you find the room, these 2.5 kids are eating cookies, listening to Chris Tomlin, and debating John 3:16, right? Bible clubs in America, right? What do we do to gather students? We model and live Jesus on a campus. We go on, we're the most encouraging people. How many of you know that what we carry is good news? Have you ever seen someone bring good news with an ugly face? I don't mean they're ugly, I mean they're like, what we do is when we're on a campus, we model and live Jesus. We build a relationship with students. We also do this thing where every school we're on, we give hundreds of donuts away. Jesus gave fish and bread, we give sweet bread. Same thing, okay?
I have something to share. Practical wise, because I love practicals too, like you asked. Sometimes, like I said previously, in our minds, we make it so complicated. But it's as simple as going up to a student and saying, hey, I like your shoes. And from that, it sparks a conversation. I mean, you don't have to make it up, like be genuine, like, oh, I like your shirt, but not really. That's just, just find something, like just anything, and start a conversation from there. And be persistent, like every week, even if they reject you. I have a lot of those stories where, there was a specific girl, I would invite her, and she would always laugh at me, like make fun of me. And I'm like, I missed the joke or something. I don't get it, But every week, I would just go back and say, hey, I just came back to see how you're doing. And then I stopped inviting her. I was like, I genuinely just came back to see how you're doing. And so one day she was like, oh, do you want to join us for lunch? So the whole lunch, I just sat with her and talked. And eventually, one day, I felt like, okay, like she's good now. So I was like, hey, do you want to come to our Jesus Club? And she's like, yeah, and she came. And then after that, every week she would help me pass out pizza. And it's like I said, it's like those small things. Just remove all the arguments from your mind. And it's so simple. It's really simple. And just if you love people, you'll be persistent. And you will not get offended because, they might say really mean things, throw stuff at you. Or they might not, who knows, But just don't get offended. Remember, they don't know Jesus. They don't know love. Yeah. You do, so just love on them.
Yeah. And ain't no one throw nothing at me, I promise.
And Martin, you had something to say.
Yeah, and obviously our goal is to get him inside the Jesus Club, right? But our goal is in that moment, we can in that moment bring Jesus to them, And our goal is to build relationships with these students. We don't want to come there with a motive or an agenda. Like, we really want to build relationship with these students. And I mean, there's been times, there was a group that every week, I would invite them every single week, constantly. And then I was like, man, God, they're not coming. And I just felt like the Lord said, don't give up. Continue to go. And finally, I think it was like the 4th week I went, and it just said, you know what, we give up, sir. You've been coming and you've been invited. We're actually going to go today, And in that moment, it just makes our day, like we did our job. If these students go in, like we did what we had to do.
Yeah, Janelle.
One thing I would add to that, and this is like the key. Are you ready for the key? Okay. Consistency wins. Yeah. So you don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to know the Bible from the front to the back, but you can be consistent and you will win students over. We are serving in schools where students are used to being let down and disappointed. People make commitments and people don't follow through. So I'm not kidding you. The difference it makes from being there every single week. I went into the school with the team this year, my first year, and they're like, who's this white chick, right? And I started speaking Spanish to one of the tables, and they were like, what? And then I'd show up every week. So I went from totally an outsider to just being consistent and showing up to that's how you win them over. And initially, like Lily said, it's just like, hey, I like your shirt. And then a week or a month or a couple months later, they're coming to Jesus Club and they're meeting Jesus. So don't be intimidated by it. There's steps, there's practicals. We're happy to walk you through it. But be consistent, and you'll be amazed.
Yeah, and there's two statements I want Brian to tell you. There's stories, and it hits on that consistency. And we're going to end with this. I'm going to pray for you, and you guys can go grab lunch. But there's a girl, I believe in Compton, that she came up to you after your message.
Yeah.
What did she say?
I was in a school. I was speaking. It was a classroom. It was barely starting the club. And after I got talking, this girl raises her hand, and she goes, hey. She goes, you going to be here next week? And I was like, yeah? She goes, cool, maybe if you show up next week, we'll start listening to you. Because these students are looking for something that their deadbeat dads don't give them. That their mothers that are absent don't give them. They're looking for consistency. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the greatest attributes of Jesus for me in my life, is that it doesn't matter when I'm at a high or it doesn't matter when I'm at a low in my life. He's consistently there. And I think it's something we forget sometimes in ministry, to be for people. Right?
Yeah, and your consistency will breed the right to be heard, and trust will be bred with consistency. Another story at Roosevelt, you're walking with a guy named Jake, and Jake goes up to a student with Brian with him, and he said, hey, so what have you gotten out of Jesus Club? What have you learned?
Yeah. Jake was like, so what did you learn from Jesus Club? And I'm standing there, and I'm like, I don't know what this kid's going to say. And he goes, you know what I learned? He goes, I learned that, Brian says that he's going to be here every week, and he's here every week. Therefore, anything he says, I can trust it. And guess what I'm saying? Guess what that anything I say is? The gospel. So that means that it's an instant connection to their heart with the gospel.